and we supported over 3,000 social impact organizations over the last 12 months. We try and do this at scale through a networked approach across the UK. That's a bit about us. When it comes to AI, really, we started like everyone else, just testing and learning together as a team. None of us are really AI experts. We're just kind of trying to make sense of this collectively. We set up some peer learning groups, one for charity digital leads to come together every couple of months to share their use cases, how they're using AI, what kind of opportunities they're seeing, but also the challenges and the risks, and support each other in doing that collectively. And we've also got a peer group for grant makers, the trusts and foundations. We've got 300 plus network members in the digital leads network, so that AI peer group, and we've got 200 plus members in the grant maker group. So there's a real appetite to share openly and learn collectively, and we've tried to convene some of those spaces. And on the back of that, I suppose, starting to share some of the experiences and the learnings we're seeing through training, running workshops like these, getting some self-serve support resources for free available. We've got a little AI course that we'll promote later, shared guides, and we've got an AI resource hub where we sort of cherry pick and compile all the things we're seeing out there that are useful, not just car stuff, of course, but like loads of useful resources from other organizations and friends and partners too. We do a little bit of research. You may have seen our AI sector survey. We do that once a year to get a bit of a snapshot of like where the sector's at with AI in terms of behaviors and use cases. We'll share a couple of stats on this today. And finally, also strategic voice. We co-convene the UK Charity AI Task Force. It's a collective of over 50 organizations representing networks of hundreds of charities dedicated really to championing responsible, inclusive use of AI across the social sector and across society, really. So lots on AI. Phew, that's a lot. And hey, we're really grateful to be running these sessions with the support from Deloitte. So we've been working in partnership with Deloitte for 3 to 4 years now. They're real champions of bridging the digital skills gap across the sector and building the digital capability really of the sector. And so we're really grateful that they're supporting this new AI series of workshops. We had one a couple of weeks ago on how to get started. We're doing this one today, and then we've got one in a couple of weeks looking at kind of with a more strategic lens at the impact that AI might have on your charity's mission. So hopefully it's something for everyone there. And we complement those with drop-ins. Never have time to do everything. You can see I'm already starting to speak faster, so apologies. I will be mindful of that. But yeah, we've got drop-ins and peer learning opportunities. So have a look at our AI resource hub if you haven't seen it yet. Get involved. There's loads of us doing similar things and just sharing openly. So hey, but today, let's land back into today. Hope everyone's feeling okay. We are building on the first session, but don't worry if you haven't taken part in the first session. I think 90 of you signed up, so about a third had taken part. We want to find out a bit more about how charities from our networks are using AI. We want to share some of the real life use cases, and hopefully that draws inspiration for you and helps you also think about how to get started. We'll share some tips. We'll share some live demos too, where possible. And we also want to reflect a little bit more on ethical considerations, which came up a lot in our first session. So think about the risks and what we can do about those really. So they're not just blockers, they're things we can address. So we can also feel more confident in engaging with these technologies. And we'll share some practical resources, next steps, and a bit of homework for afters. So hopefully you've got some really practical, tangible things to take away, as well, of course, as the bigger questions that AI brings up. So a bit of a mixed agenda, like I said, bit of talking, polling. We'll have opportunity for breakouts. So it'd be amazing if you were up for sharing videos, doing a bit of sharing in breakouts. If you feel comfortable with that, no worries. If not, you can just stay in the main room, have a breather for 10 minutes if you don't want that. And then we'll do a couple of demos too. And it'd be amazing if you could mute yourselves whilst we're doing the presentations and unmute yourselves when we're inviting everyone to share. This is a quick poll from the registration to get a sense of like where you're at with AI. 70% kind of dabbling, experimenting a little. We've got a few that are using AI tools regularly, so a bit more advanced. It'd be great to see how you're using that too from those first two groups. Some of you are just getting started, and some of you are already kind of starting to embed that in your organization. So nice mix, but majority is kind of dabbling, experimenting. So hopefully today's useful, and we'd love to share what we're learning, but also what you're seeing and learn from you and make sure this is reciprocal, of course. Right. we're going to start with a little poll to see how everyone's doing, how confident you feel about AI in your work, and then I'll hand over to Ellen to do a quick, bit of scene setting on what we're talking about today. So it'd be amazing if, first of all, if you've got a phone, you can scan this QR code to join the polls. We're using Mentimeter. If you'd rather just do it on your laptop, there's a link in the chat with a Menti poll, which you can click on, and it should take you to a separate tab. And then you should have a live poll, which will look something like this. So I'm going to come back to this slide in case you want to use the QR code. Let us know how you're doing. We're going to be using this tool throughout the session. So hopefully you're able to log on to that. If not, feel free to join in the chat. We'll be reading out the questions and the answers, of course. And then please shout if anything's coming that's urgent in the chat, because I am focused on the slides. So just let me know.
Yeah, a
How's that? All good?
couple of shout outs, which is lovely, and asks about recordings. We are recording this, and the recording from the first session is on our website. So there are a few transcription tools that have snuck in. I know this is a session on AI, but I have for this session removed those, and we're recording this, and we'll share that with you. Thanks,
Amazing.
David.
Thanks, Helen. Great. So how are you feeling? These are our Llama friends. They join our sessions regularly. How are you doing? So the options are on this Llama scale. How are you feeling right now? You need a nap. You're a bit stressed. You're energized. You're feeling chilled. That Llama's chilled. Or you're excited and ready to learn. What have we got? Lots of you excited. It's nice. A quarter feeling chilled. That's good, because we need some chilled vibes in this session too. It's been a busy few days. Energized. We're going to lift the energy levels, Ellen, 3%. And hopefully what you're learning today will help you remove some of the stress for those of you that are feeling a bit stressed, and not amplify it, right? So that's also what we hope to share from this session. And a few of you being feeling a bit sleepy. Yeah, I can empathize. It's been a long week. How confident do you feel about using AI in your work? Quick snapshot, not confident at all, slightly confident, confident, very confident. Those are the options. Okay, we've got about half feeling slightly confident. So that echoes what we saw, aligns with the getting started, kind of experimenting a little bit, building confidence through learning and doing, which is great. And a quarter of you not confident at all. So hopefully we can help you with that, and hopefully that bar will go up by the end of the session. And great to see some of you are already quite confident too. So nice mix. And for those of you that are really confident, it'd be great to see what you're doing, and support others, of course, in breakouts and things to help them with practical tips that helped you build their confidence levels. That's amazing. We're going to keep using this poll, so please keep your tab open. Great that you've joined in. I can see lots of you joining the poll. And for now, I would like to. Was there one more poll? Oh yeah, there is. Let's see that one in a bit. We're going to go back to that use cases, how you're using AI. I'm going to hand over to Ellen now for a quick recap. Ellen, and I'll keep an eye on the waiting room.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, David. And yeah, really great to hear everyone's feeling this morning. We talked a bit about how we're feeling about AI, how much experience we've got, but we want to do a quick recap on what actually is it, right? So it sounds like some pretty kind of experienced people dabbling with AI. So this might not be new to you. You might have come to the last workshop, but always helpful to start with a bit of a recap. So we've got a definition. Don't worry, there's not going to be too many of these throughout the session. This is one from IBM. We shared it in the last workshop as well. So artificial intelligence, or AI, is a technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human intelligence and problem-solving capabilities. That's one definition. You might already be experimenting with different tools, different ways that can support your work. And we're going to share some examples of that as well along the way. So we shared last time this graph, or a version of this graph, we got a slightly different one this time, but just to show kind of one of the reasons why it's kind of gathering so much attraction at the moment, lots of people gathering around AI. There's lots of reasons for that. You'll have your own. But one is just the rate at which it's being adopted. So ChatGPT, it took just 3 months to get 100 million, to get to 100 million users. And to put that in context, it took Facebook just 4.5 years, and the internet 7 years. So, it's pretty striking when you look at those numbers. We shared that last time, but what we didn't say is that ChatGPT has now got to over 180 million users. That figure has probably changed even as I'm saying it. So just the rapid adoption and use of these tools is one of the really kind of I guess striking things about how it's evolving and disrupting things. And alongside that, there's all these other tools. So this explosion of tools. Some of them are here, the little logos there. You might be using some of them. Some of them might be new to you. And I guess the thing about that is it presents, all these opportunities for ways in which we can do our work slightly differently or speed up our processes. But a challenge there as well around keeping up, which is definitely something that we've heard from charities and funders that we work with. How do you keep up with all these tools and the opportunities that they present? And there's kind of two things that we wanted to mention here. One is that I suppose even if you're not using some of these tools, your service users, your donors, your campaigners, there's millions of people that are using these tools. So kind of adapting to that, engaging with it as an individual and as an organization is going to be really important. And yeah, I've got this quote here from Professor Donald Clark, an entrepreneur, which I just find, yeah, kind of really helpful to kind of step back and put in context what we're talking about when we're talking about AI. And it's that generative AI, so ChatGPT is an example of that. It changes our relationship with knowledge. So if we want to find a comparison in history, it's like the invention of the alphabet and the printing press. So I'm just going to pause to let that sort of land. So it's not just a kind of AI technology thing. It changes how we value and access information. And the alphabet. If you think about kind of the how that changed, our communication, our society today. That's the kind of transformation that we're looking at right now. So really important that we're engaging with it, which is why it's so amazing that we've got 163 and counting people that have showed up today to kind of get curious, get sharing and learning together. And we know that lots of charities and funders, I know there's some funders here today as well, are using AI. In our AI survey, which we kind of sought to get a bit of a temperature check on how the sector is feeling around AI last year and this year. We heard that the most common ways that AI is being used are some of these. So creating or editing content, transcribing or summarizing copy, checking spelling or grammar. And some of the most commonly used tools, and these are in order, were ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Canva Magic Studio, WhatsApp, and Google Gemini. And I think the interesting thing here is that we asked this question last year and this year, and these kind of top ways of using AI and the top tools have stayed exactly the same. So I think that's really interesting. It feels like there's, more experimenting, more confidence around kind of how these tools can help us work more efficiently. There's already some good experimentation, but there's room to explore some of those other opportunities, use cases, and tools out there. And so we're going to provide some examples today of maybe some things that you haven't tried. And yeah, hopefully this can kind of kickstart your journey. And if you have tried them, please share how that's going. And we also shared this AI spheres of influence diagram. Sometimes we call it the egg. And this is a really helpful tool to kind of acknowledge that there's all these different perspectives on AI. So you might be super excited about how it can help you work more efficiently, and at the same time worried about the impact it might have on minority groups or on the environment. And those are all really valid, but it can be really tricky to hold all of that at the same time. So this aims to help us address and consider those each one by one. So, for example, if you are a fundraiser, you might be, super excited about how AI can help you analyze a lot of kind of data that you've got on your donors, for example, help you spot themes. And that might lead to new processes and ways of working. So if you're kind of able to analyze that data more quickly, does that mean that you're able to predict when someone might drop off as a regular donor? Does that lead to new processes you might put in place to kind of check in and retain them, or new insight that might help you develop new proposals or products, events that they might get engaged with and kind of yeah, keep supporting you as an organization? There's all these other kind of layers that we chatted about a little bit last time as well. So around how really interesting conversations around AI can impact and support our mission or change that completely. Um, we're not going to get into as much detail on that today. We've got a workshop, the next workshop in this series, which is really going to focus on how AI can impact and change our mission and kind of tools that support you to think about that. So today we're really going to focus on those first two levels of the we've got some great use cases that we'll share. And the main kind of take home message, I suppose, of all of that is that, it's really important, like we said, to engage with this, keep learning, keep sharing, experiment, start small, because we need an empowered, vocal, and influential civil society. That's all of us. Really confident in our use of these tools and our understanding of these tools. So we're going to share some examples from our networks of how people are already experimenting, and we're going to invite you to do a bit of sharing as well, because we know just how useful that is to help us as we kind of keep working in the open, keep getting curious and learning from each other. So that's the brief recap. Hopefully something new in there if you joined us last time, and enough in there to kind of set the scene if this is your first time joining one of these sessions. And then yeah, we've got another poll. So back over to you, David.
I just brought this up now. I thought it'd be nice to compare with the survey data you showed around like, the really simple use cases. Be great to see how you're using it, how that compares. So if you have used it, what for? Is it writing, editing content, transcribing, research, brainstorming, image generation, data analysis, or not used yet, right? Because some of you are new to it. Just so we can get a sense of like how people are using it. And I can see that's also coming out in the chat. So great that you're showing in the chat. We're going to save that and add it to the transcript and create a nice little output. So do share in the chat if you want to add a bit more kind of detail on top of these polls. So lots of you using it for writing, editing content. Half of you for transcribing. Just under half on using it for research. We're going to use a couple of examples around research. And not many on data analysis, image generation. Okay, that's a nice mix. Great. Thanks a lot for joining that poll. And I think, Ellen, we're going to introduce the next activity.
Yes.
Break it up a bit, yeah?
Yeah, so that's a bit of an intro from us. But yeah, in the spirit of that kind of open sharing, learning together, we wanted to hand it back over to you. So we're going to jump into some breakout rooms in a second. So I'll set that up. But just to look back for a minute at the last workshop, if you were there, and if you weren't, like get a little snapshot of an activity we did then. You might remember that we invited everybody to have a think about where AI could help you. And we brainstormed some kind of daily tasks that, where you experience a bit of frustration. Maybe it's a routine thing you do often that is taking up too much of your time or more time than you would like. It's stopping you from getting to something else that you would love to have more time for. We asked everyone to have a think about, what is that task? And that's a great place to start thinking about where AI could potentially help you work more efficiently or streamline your processes. These are some examples. There were loads of great examples. I've just selected a couple. So someone saying, write a business plan, maybe. Yeah, why not? Writing better emails is in there, trying to make my fundraising applications better, writing a strategy. So some great examples. If you were with us last time, we invited you to have a think about an experiment you could have a go at around AI to kind of help kind of shift this around a little bit, try something new, experiment with a tool that might help you address this challenge. If you didn't kind of during that last workshop, you might want to have a little think now about, what's something that you've been experimenting with or a frustration and that you're experiencing. And we're going to we're going to get into some breakout rooms in a second. And we'd love you to share, an experiment that you have tried. And it could be however small you like. What's something you've had to go at? What went well and what didn't go well? I know that everyone's at different levels here. So if you haven't had a go, that's fine. Maybe there's something you're excited to try. Share that. So we know from the survey from the last session that people really enjoyed getting a chat to other people. And so we've kept the breakout rooms in, but we also heard in the feedback that actually not everyone got a chance to talk. So I'm going to try setting this up a little bit better. One top tip, we're going to have about 5 people in each breakout room. So it's about 10 minutes. So, maybe rotate the speaker after 1 minute. Make sure everybody gets a chance to share. If you fancy, you might nominate someone to be timekeeper, but we're going to help with that. We'll send a little message in the chat to let you know when 1 minute is up. So hopefully, yeah, that feels clear. One experiment, what went well, what didn't go well. We're going to have a Menti as well, where you can track that after your conversation or during the chat if you've got time. But yeah, do make sure you have a chance to share with each other. I think we should be ready to go. I've set up some breakouts. Anything else you want to add, David, before we jump in?
No, that's all great. If you don't feel like joining the breakout, please, that's all good. Do what feels right, feels comfortable for you, and feel free to join the Menti and add some stuff in the Menti too. So we've got that to share afterwards too. And enjoy connecting.
Right, see you in 10 minutes. Fab. So yeah, welcome back. I think we'll just wait for everybody to regroup and then we'll dive back in. So I hope that was helpful, that you got to say hello, meet someone new, maybe learn something new. Do remember to pop yourself back on mute when you're back in the main room. Thank you. Fab. So I think we're back. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. I know it's quite short, but yeah, really helpful to learn from others, right? Hopefully you'll agree. And there's some really great examples here of how you are already experimenting with AI. So I was just scanning. There's quite a lot around like summarizing. So again, it kind of aligns with the survey findings, right? Which isn't a surprise. A lot of experimentation happening around that efficiency level, which is really great to see. Hopefully there was some kind of new ideas or new experiments that you could kind of piggyback on from that quick chat. But summarizing reports, summarizing meeting notes, using transcription tools. I know there's a few mentioned in the chat as well around Copilot as a tool, ChatGPT. I don't know if you picked out anything else, David, that you wanted to highlight or surprised you.
No, like real alignment, right? With the stats we saw earlier, summarizing, creating content, transcribing. So really great. I'd love to share a couple of examples of charities that are kind of doing things around ways of working, around, creating efficiencies in their service delivery. So I think that could be a nice segue to sharing a little bit of what's coming out through the network, our
Fab.
Digital Leaders network, and maybe do a couple of demos if we've got time. How does that sound?
Sounds good. And if that conversation sparked questions, I'm sure it did, do put them in the chat. That you'll probably have more as David runs through some of these demos, and we've got time at the end to address some of those questions. But yeah, let's dive into some demos. Over to you, David.
Great. So we've got, like I said at the start, for those of you that arrived late, it's really great. We've got some peer groups where there's loads of sharing from charities around how they're using AI. I'd love to highlight a couple of examples from our Digital Leaders Network AI peer group, and amazing to see some of you from the group that have joined. So that's really great. And maybe 3 different ways of like how charities are using AI, both internally, externally, and to enhance productivity. So the first example I'd like to share is a really simple example, but it's quite a nice example because this was like a free tool that was developed by the Mike Hudson Foundation, and a group of us in the AIP group in our network user tested it, and the idea was really to help website users quickly find answers by pulling info from a website. So it's like a chatbot, and this idea came from basically there's often challenges around website navigation, trying to help users find information quicker and also save time on repetitive queries that often like, charities receive by email or other messages, other means, and reduce staff burden. So a few charities tested it. There had 10 to 15 charities using it, and we used the AI experimentation canvas that we shared in the first workshop. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but just to show that this really helps map out the hypothesis, the thing we're trying to test here. And here's like, we think that Nobot will support site users to access precise answers to their questions quicker. This is how we're going to test it. We're gonna check the feedback from users. We're going to check the qualitative responses. We're going to score the answers, so we can kind of check the output, see if it's useful, see where the errors come up. And we set some boundaries. So we set a time frame to it with the group. We had humans in the loop, of course, ourselves from the cast team, but also those leads in the different charities testing it. And then we did a bit of like a playback session to see what was good, what was less good, fed that back to the developer. And the output, what's come out of that, for instance, on Akiva's website, this is one of our members of our network. We've also put it on our website, so I can show in a bit. Is they've embedded it on their website as a test to see how, if it helps their service users access information, if it reduces time in terms of inquiries. There's a little Ask Me button here. Can you all see this, by the way? Because am I still screen sharing? Ellen, thumbs up if that's all good. Great. And what it'll do is it'll pull up a little pop-up. I was testing it earlier, so let me reload this. A little bot. This is Nobot. And you can ask it a question. So if you're just navigating on this website, I just want to find out about membership. How can I become a member of Akiva? Because it's a membership-based organization for CEOs of voluntary organizations. It'll start searching, pulling responses specifically from obviously the relevant pages on the website. And what's quite neat is that it'll also pull up specific pages with citations, references. So if I want to check something more around eligibility, check your eligibility, I need a bit more information on that, I can go and click on a specific page around eligibility. And associate membership, for instance, or something that they've cited here. So quite low risk in that sense. So just putting out some general questions, and of course we can monitor. Akiva can monitor the kind of queries they're getting, the outputs they're getting, and of course do a little bit of customizing and training on the back end for that. So that's just an example of how you can use AI to really help your service user, beneficiaries to access information. This is done in a sort of co-design way and quite low risk way to test external facing AI. The risk will vary on the type of organization you are and the type of support you're providing. For Cast, ourselves, for Kivo, having a little Nobot sort of here, sort of sat on the website, we've based on the experiments we've done and the consultations we have, it's pretty low risk in terms of getting things wrong. The content might be wrong, but it's fairly low risk. So that's an example of external facing. Now there's some really great examples coming out from our network, and I'm just going to pick out one from Citizens Advice, Stockport, Oldham, Rochdale, Trafford, Castleford, in short, Castleford. Citizens Advice in that area, in that region. And they've done amazing work with AI. And one of the really interesting examples is like how they've created real-time efficiencies, reducing case note writing by over 50%, and using AI to convert one-to-one calls, sometimes 20-minute calls that are transcribed and then converted into sort of really short, snappy case notes that then are fed into their CRM. The purpose for them, always think about like what problem we're trying to solve here, rather than just use AI for the sake of it, is to support their citizens advice advisors, so their staff. This is an internal tool, converting call into concise case notes. The tool they use is they developed after some experimenting and testing a bespoke Energini platform, and they've also integrated it with Microsoft tools that we're already using. And this has reduced admin burden considerably. And I'd love to show Stuart Pearson, who's the head of innovation, did a little great show and tell in a session, one of our AIP groups a few weeks ago. I'd love to share a little segment, a little demo of that quickly now. He's here talking about specifically the case note tool. So hopefully you can hear this. Ellen, it'd be great if you could put a thumbs up if you can hear this.
An element of it called Note Genie, which is a speech-to-text transcription and case note automation tool. Now, for those who are unaware of Citizens Advice, part of the advisor's role, as well as obviously advising a client, is to make copious case notes about what advice was given to that client, attach it to the client's record, That serves two purposes. One, it allows the next advisor, if the client comes back, to understand what has already happened and what they can do next. And also from a quality assurance point of view, it allows supervisors and national citizens advice to check the quality of the advice that's being given. As great as that is, it's a massive pain point within the service. So, for example, our light touch advice line service, where the average call takes around 20 minutes, the write-up times can often take 14 minutes. For an expert money advisor dealing with a client for 2 hours, the case notes generated from that often take an hour themselves. So estimated it takes, for a caseworker, they could be spending a day a week of their time just writing case notes. So it's a real pain point for the service. And what it means is it's taking advisors away from what they want to do, which is advising people. So we've created Note Genie, which uses AI, so you can use it across the channels. So web chat, Connect is our telephony platform, or in person. So I'm going to pick Connect, and what you could do then is record the call live, and what it'll do is do a live transcription. Obviously, I'm not going to do that now, so I'll do a Blue Peter style and upload a training conversation that we use with our trainees. Let me just find one of our calls. So this is, I'm just going to upload here, I think it's a 20-minute call. So if you can imagine, what happens in real life is as the conversation is going on, a transcription will appear live on the right-hand panel for the advisor. Then at the end of the call, it will convert that transcription into a case note using AI. So it's using AI for us to do the speech to text, or if you're doing web chat, text to text. And then it uses AI again to interrogate that transcript, and using carefully laid prompts, extract all the key information into a format that meets our quality standards. And so obviously it's doing it at the moment. On average, it takes, so this, like I said, this was a 20-minute call. So there's the transcript. So it's pulled through, labeling client advisor through there in a matter of seconds. Obviously that'll be happening in real time. And then what it'll do now is interrogate this transcript to say, right, what is the key information that we need to get from this to generate the case notes? And then there we go, it's generated a case note. So it often takes around 90 seconds to generate a case note. So again, it was a 20-minute call. It's pulled through all the key information, so the client's interaction, client situation, what the advisor give us guidance, any financial situation, benefit support, any additional support offered. Got some client information there. We've got Presidio, which is a tool within Microsoft's suite of tools that automatically redacts any personal identifiable information in there, so there's no way a client can be linked from these records. And it's done all that now. All the advisor will need to do now is click copy that, paste it into the Citizens Advice CRM, make any adjustments. They can obviously refer to the transcript if they think that it's missed some of the information out. And at the moment, we've got a tool on here where the advisors can rate it, because obviously Note Genie is still in pilot phase. So they can say, excellent is if they've only made to make like a sentence or two. The amber is if there's about 50% savings, but they're still to make some additional information added to the case note. And red is if it's actually got some information wrong. So if it's
I'm going to pause there, but it gives you an idea. We've got a longer segment which we'll share as part of the follow-up. And I know there's questions about GDPR in the chat from Chris. And I think, as Stuart explained it there, they're using Microsoft Presidio to redact the personal sensitive data before training or testing the AI tool, so it's compliant with GDPR that way. So that's how they manage some of the risk. They've done a really kind of human-centered design approach to develop that, and built in some quality insurance too, which is a really nice example. And what's great about this example is that they've also deployed it, and they're building the real kind of efficiency case, if you like, that we're here to talk about today, in terms of reducing time and enabling staff to really focus on more specialist or more human connection with those beneficiaries that might need that extra support. So that's an example from Citizens Advice, and we'll share the longer demo if it's useful for others as part of the output. There's another really nice tool that's coming out through the group, our AIP group, but also lots of people using it around different conversations. And that's AI as your smart research buddy. And there's a great tool called Notebook LM, which is a Google tool, and it helps you quickly understand, summarize, and simplify the content of a knowledge base. Now, this could be just a long research PDF doc, or it could be 20 different thematic docs on a specific topic. Now, this is a nice, easy way to experiment on those of you that are thinking about using big data sets and quite a lot of qualitative information into a tool to help you really access the specific information you need in quite a low risk, cheap way, because there's a free product, of course. Comes with its caution in terms of what you're going to input on there. But it's to quickly do live demo. You can just access Notebook LM by Googling it. There's a free product you can use. Don't put any sensitive data, etc., in any kind of free software you're using. And what you then have is you can start creating your little documents. So this is the interface. This is an example of how Cast, for instance, we've been putting together all the AI articles, all the AI templates, the AI resources that we have to create a little knowledge bank of AI. This needs updating. It's some bits from a few months ago. And what it will do is you can then interrogate it and it'll pull responses specifically from this knowledge bank. So unlike ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, which will go and scrape the web and get lots of wider data sets, this is more contained. So it's a nice way of like testing out whole interrogating the data here. So for instance, if we want to find out what are the risks regarding AI for charities, it will just pull responses from all this data set. And again, it will put citations so you can go and have a look at the specific original bit of content. So if you've got, ensuring you've got a human in the loop, you can go and check what it's coming out with. And hopefully I'll load in a second. So here you have it. So you've got like accuracy, reliability, data and privacy, and all these little citations here. It brings out the original content. And if I click on one of these, it's going to bring it out from that original document. So this was this was like a little theory of change document that we were drafting. So a really nice way of like, again, distilling, getting closer to data, especially when you've got lots of information and you don't always have time to read things. A great way of like pulling specific data. It's also does all the things that a general purpose model would do. So you can summarize it in simpler English or in a different language. And then you can save the note and you'll have a little studio here. So you can start saving briefing notes and specific documents, share that with your team members, share that with your peers, and build your little knowledge bank here of summaries, of FAQs, of study guides. And what's really great about it, for those that don't always like reading lots of documents, that find sometimes information a little bit too complex, overwhelming, it's got a really nice audio overview, which will create a little podcast version of your report, or in this case, all these documents. So you'll just generate it in a few seconds. And that's a nice way of, if you're on the move, I'm always on the move doing school runs and stuff. I don't always have time to read things. It will give me a little taster, give me a feel of like what this is about. It doesn't replace me reading it in depth, but it's a nice teaser, a nice way of like making sometimes lots of information more accessible, especially for people with lower literacy, people who don't have English as a first language. It's a nice tool, and they're building it into different languages. Of course, there's different iterations of it, and they're also now building features which will help you bring this to video. So like kind of like TED Talks, but just AI generated. And this is what it would sound like.
Okay, so today we're going to take a deep dive into how charities in the UK are using AI. And you've given me just like a ton of articles and guides and even internal documents.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a lot to cover.
You do.
And it seems like you're particularly interested in like the practical side of things.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially how AI can help charities kind of work smarter, not harder, especially those small.
What I suggest we do is I will take a transcript from this workshop and we create a little podcast as an output so you can listen to it in your own time, see if it reflects your experience of what you heard in this workshop, and see if this is a useful tool. These are all like obviously early stage, so they're all improving. These tools are becoming more refined. You can start now if on the paid version, customizing the podcast, etc. So you can start really putting your stamp on it and curating it so it serves real added purpose. That's an example. And risk, we always talk about risk, right? So we're always mindful of like in our experimentation canvas, what do we think about here? Really important to use this to support your understanding. It's like your research assistant rather than your head of research. Not replace that deep reading, that really kind of human affinity. Always sense check the conclusions that are coming out, and especially on these free tools, don't put confidential, sensitive information. Test it out with a public PDF or something that you've already shared on the web, and have a play with it. that's really low risk. You're not really putting anything sensitive. The outputs that are coming out are merely for you or for your team. So test it out internally. Benefits for us and for members of the network who are using this tool, including in the grant making tool, the grant making group, faster access to insight, getting instant focused answers, and also really around accessibility, simplifying complex information, literally in a few seconds, makes information much more accessible when we're in a kind of industry of sharing loads of information that's comes from all sides, often quite jargony. This is a great tool to really try and democratize research and knowledge out there. That's NoBookLM. We'll share the link and we'll share a little podcast version of this workshop. Ellen, if you're up for it, it won't be us talking, but it'll be our American avatars. Research Buddy. We're collating loads of examples of how the sector is experimenting. Please do share yours if you're interested. We've started putting them together. This is mainly from our group, peer groups, how bit of inspiration, right? How Wildlife Trust, for instance, were testing creating images of rewilded landscapes to support funding bids. How the Britain Club are using Miro Assist. So they're using Miro Whiteboard. They're starting to test these tools to see how it can synthesize some of their data. Mad Lag are delivering course outlines and materials using ChatGPT. Catch-22 are using AI for like general kind of virtual assistants in all aspects of their work. And there's some really interesting examples also of like using AI to help with boards and governance, like the National Emergencies Trust, by introducing an AI advisor to your board. This is all testing, right? It's just like testing these things out. What are the opportunities? Is this helpful? We're going to share these in more detail. We're about to share in the next couple of weeks a bit more of a library of use cases, so you can have a look at those. There's some really interesting things coming out also around impact measurement. So how do you bypass a sort of feedback form by distilling a bit what we saw with Stuart, like the conversations that organizations might have with beneficiaries or peers or stakeholders into like impact reports. Some really exciting stuff happening. We don't have time to go into too much depth, but just to let you know, there's lots of things out there too, and we'll be sharing more in a second. Love to hear what stood out for you from some of these examples of demos. There are so many out there. It's really hard to pick and curate these. So if you could, it'd be amazing if you could spend like just 30 seconds. Test. There's a little test word here in the word cloud. Just one thing that stood out for you. What's useful for you in terms of demos and use cases when we've got limited time to share these? Have a look at the Menti slide. And let's see what comes up. I'll put it back up here. Ellen, it'd be amazing maybe if we could reshare the link to Menti if we've got it handy.
Yes, let me grab that.
Sorry, I haven't got my...
I was just going to say, I was just putting in the chat that I appreciate that some of those examples that we shared just there, those little brainstorm case studies were pretty small, but you can find all those examples in our AI resource hub. And here is the Menti.
So there's some joy for the podcast, which is nice. NoBookLM, efficiencies, chatbots. All right, good to see. We'll share all these polls too as part of the follow-up. I know that was suggested in the chat. Of course, we would share all these because it's really useful data to use with your teams and whoever's interested, really. And on tools, right? I know there's conversation in the chat about the tool. It comes up a lot. What tool should we be using? It's the wrong question, really, isn't it? I mean, to start with, I think really we want to emphasize, start with your use case, not necessarily the tool. And then Ellen's going to share, sorry.
I'm going to jump in a few minutes, but yeah, there's some really great tips in here. And we're going to share in a few minutes some of those examples and kind of some of the use cases. I know there's a few questions on that in the chat as well, which actually is really nice to see a bit of peer support happening, people sharing tips and even documents around how they have gone about mapping different tools in the use case. We've got some examples that we're going to share in a minute, but some general tips here. Yeah, start with the use case rather than the tool. I know some people in the chat asked around like integration as well. So in some places, like if you're already using Zoom because it's already approved by your organization, that's a great place to start, right? Because you're using tools that you've already maybe got data sharing practices around, and you can start exploring those like AI enhancements in there. So if you're already using Miro, you might start exploring that. But yeah, somebody asked in the chat, what if you're starting with a use case and actually you're trying to work out, well, what is the best tool? So somebody asked, like, I want to do PowerPoint presentations. What's the best tool for that? And how does it integrate with my other kind of tools that I'm using? And I think the best thing to do is like start experimenting as well. We've got examples of how others are doing that. Give it a go. Some like try a small test, start small with something. Make sure you've got permission from your organization to do that. Really important. And again, like if your organization's already using Microsoft, for example, that's a great place to start because you can get licenses. You've already got permission to do that. I don't know, David, if you want to jump back in. You've had a chance
No,
to
that's
catch your
great.
breath.
Thanks, Ellen. So I've caught my breath. Sorry. I think, and the other thing I know in the chat, there's questions around like the specialist tools versus the generalist tools. These are really these sessions are about starting out, building confidence, and I think going with versatility and general purpose tools first is a good starting point, because ChatGPT, or if you've got the plus version, $20 a month, it will help you create content. It will help you generate images. It will be really good at deep research. It will be good at reasoning. It will do some coding. I mean, it'll do pretty much, it'll give you a feeling of like the kind of things you can do. If you then want identified a use case which is more specialist, financial analysis, just much real specialisms, then of course we need to have a look at the more custom bespoke tools that are best used for that. But to get started, which is kind of what the series is about, there are all those tools, the Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, we're going to look at a list in a minute. They're good starting points because they're very versatile. They won't do everything in terms of deploying something specific for your organization, but they will help you experiment and get a feel for things. So I think that's quite, I know there's always a debate around this, but I think that's, and we heard it in our AI peer group yesterday, a small charity using ChatGPT for pretty much most of their use cases. And then if you want to refine that, you can build custom GPTs for specialist tasks. I think those are the starting points really in terms of getting started. And thanks, Ellen, for sharing the thing about also looking at the tools you're already using, because AI is embedded in most of your tools. So have a look at those two, because they're probably already compliant with your organizational policies, etc. Tools, lots of tools. This is a little list, and thank you so much. I know Brian from Bard's Charity shared this list yesterday. It's also a list that we use from small to medium businesses. It's updated frequently. This changes all the time. What these tools are best for, what the standout features are, what the next. This is an AI-generated summary from a longer spreadsheet, which we're going to share, a very detailed spreadsheet about what these tools right now are best for and what their standout features are. Generally, if you're starting out, I don't think it really matters whether you're using ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, Meta, Mistral, DeepSeek, the list goes on. Have a go. There are general purpose tools. So in terms of getting started, they'll be able to give you a sense of what it can do. Once you start then identifying more specific use cases, it's worth delving into the detail of what's really good at. Bearing in mind, these are always changing. Claude just launched voice to voice. That was one of the ChatGPT's amazing features, the live mode, voice to voice mode. Everyone's kind of trying to do similar things. So again, back to this slide, right, about what's the use case, what are you already using? If it's just general stuff and general experimentation, pick one of these. Be very mindful, look at the risk in a bit of like the free tools, obviously, just don't put anything sensitive, just put stuff that's already out there in the public domain. And the more you pay, the more secure your data is, which is no surprise based on what we've learned from tech companies the last kind of 10 years. There's some slide here with AI integrations in everyday charity tools that we're starting to see. This is not in the spreadsheet that we'll share, but it's just we're starting to build like a bit of like the integrations. You can see, for instance, Copilot is not in here because it's not a standalone AI model. It's like an embedded assistant, right? So it's like integrated in Microsoft 365. Gemini's integrating Google Workspace, Magic Studio, and Canva. Have a look at what those AI tools or features might be on the tools you're already using in your organization. We'll show this afterwards. So I'm going to maybe pause there and have a look at the next section. Helen, shall we pause for some questions? Have we got time for questions? What do you think?
There's so many amazing questions in the chat that I can't keep up. So what I would say is, if you have a burning question, please do come along to our drop-in session. So we've got a drop-in happening next week. When is it? On the 18th of June at 12 o'clock for an hour. That's a great place to dive into some of these in a bit more detail. Also get some peer support if you found that breakout helpful. Keep connecting. I'm just going to have a scan. I think you addressed, yeah, there's a couple of questions around tools, which I think we've touched on already. There was a few around like data sharing ethics, copyright risks. So it feels like that's quite a good segue to the content we're about to dive into now around what are some of the risks around this. Just having another scan. There's a shout out for the llama check-in, which we love.
I can also see, Claire, that there's also a question around a tool for transcribing. It comes up a lot. I will share, we haven't got it in this presentation. We'll create a little table of what we're hearing, what we're seeing from the transcribing, note-taking tools. There are so many. And again, they're changing all the time. So Claire, we'll share that as part of the output. Thanks for asking.
Fab. Should we dive in then to risk? David, what do you reckon?
Yeah, let's keep going.
So yeah, we're going to touch. Yeah, so AI, it does have a lot of risks. Some of you already have named some of those that we are really important to consider. So we're like David said, we're not AI experts, but we are going to share just some of the things that we've learned in our experimentation from the network, amazing people that we're collaborating with, but also from others and who are kind of creating great resources in this space. So one, already come up in the chat around data safety. It's not surprising that this comes up because in the AI survey that CAST ran, we saw that 70% of people, there's 266 people that filled in that survey. 70% were concerned about this, and I think something really interesting is that that has increased significantly from last year. And our hunch is that as we're experimenting more, the sector is experimenting more. These questions around data safety, they're becoming more prevalent, and people are asking more questions, which is a good thing. So yeah, we've covered some of this already, but just to kind of pull out a couple of things. So I guess nothing is free. So I suppose you might be using free tools to start experimenting. That is a great place to start. But often they are, they're using what you're inputting, that data, to train future models. So it's tricky, isn't it? Because in the social sector, we want to be kind of really efficient with our money. So if you're using a pay plan, or if you're not using a pay plan, your data might be stored and learned from. So really important to only share things that are already out there in the open, so that you are maybe anonymizing your data. Do anonymize your data. Don't share sensitive documents or confidential information. Don't share things that are sensitive to use of personal information, to your donors, to the people that you're working with, your service users, or about the charity. It's really risky to paste in reports. What else is there useful to share? I think we really touched actually on like some of the stuff around paid accounts. Can be kind of better for privacy controls. I'm not sure there's anything else that I wanted to highlight. I guess there is a risk, but it's kind of about weighing up, being conscious of that risk. We've got a template we'll share in a minute that help kind of think through the risks, but also think of the mitigations. So it's not kind of scaremongering to say like, don't do it, but consider the risk, consider how you'll mitigate that risk, so that you can keep experimenting. Environment. So there's loads of, really important discussions happening around the environmental impact of AI. There is an environmental impact. So using AI does have an impact on the environment, but I think it's good to put it in perspective. So something I kind of find really helpful is looking at, what is the impact of other digital activity, of our kind of increasingly digital lives on the environment, and kind of how does that compare to the impact of AI. So kind of one relevant example, right? We're all here for 90 minutes on a workshop collaborating. Streaming for an hour or like online, that can use the same amount of energy as chatting with AI for a full day. What else is helpful to share on here? I had one a second ago that I've lost now, around like the impact of on water. Let me grab that stat. Oh, I can't find it. Hang on, let me get my notes. So yeah, 1 hour video conferencing or streaming requires between 2 to 12 liters of water. One single ChatGPT conversation uses about 50 centiliters of water. So that's equivalent to one plastic bottle. Like I just find that really helpful to put these things in context and compare it to other digital kind of activity that we're doing. So I guess the message here is that, we're not going to be able to get into this in any kind of detail. There's loads of great information in the AI playbook for charities, but it's about weighing up the impact on the environment and all the other risks, but also the benefit to you and to your organization and being responsible about that. I don't know if you want to add anything there, David, because I know this is a question that comes up often in some of our peer groups, or yeah, dive into some of the other kind of risks around hallucinations or consent.
Happy to carry on, Ellen, and see if
That's
there's any
great.
questions on what we're sharing here. And big shout out to Make Sense of It, who've created this AI playbook for charities where they really address some of these questions in a really concise, articulate way. And this is also where we're pulling some of this information from. So shout out to them. Hallucinations comes up a lot as a risk. Basically, AI gets things wrong, like humans do. And that's known as hallucinations, to use the jargon. So the error rate is really low. It's 1 to 2%, often better than humans when it comes to repetitive tasks. But the mistakes can be quite weird and surprising and just come out of nowhere. So one thing would be like this kind of PhD-like summary of this amazing research, and then suddenly it will come up with something totally wacky. That's a little bit off-putting. That's a little bit worrying when you're trying to rely on these tools for, really kind of clearly defined outputs that you want to help you do your work better. So that's kind of there. That's what we know. What you can do is always double check facts and advice. Always use it as a starting point, as a bit of help. Look out for the weird stuff. So by reading it, by being the human in the loop, by being in charge of whatever task you're carrying out. You're not delegating it all to AI. Hopefully it's helping you, but it will get things wrong. And one thing we found really useful is to just use really clear and detailed instructions, prompts, briefings like you would a human. The clearer the context, the clearer the role it's playing, the clearer the output you're looking for, the clearer the tone you want it to take based on your brand notes, if you're using it for comms, the better the output. And it's that old saying of like garbage in, garbage out. Have a play with that. Spend time on getting a feel for what works better for that. And we shared some tips on that in the first workshop, and ask for sources and just query things if you think something's looking a little bit you're a bit unsure about something. Intellectual property, copyright, it came up a lot in the first workshop, which was quite surprising. It's a minefield. So who owns the IP of AI generated content? We were asked this in the first workshop. If you're designing a little custom GPT with some outputs and you're trying to monetize that, who owns the output? It's really complicated. It'll vary by tool, it'll vary by country based on law. And the key risks, different tools will have different rules. So some will allow full use and resale, others will limit commercial use or keep partial ownership. Copyright often requires a human creator. The UK law is a little bit nebulous, a bit grey on that front. And if you own the output and you feel like you've got the right to use it, you can still infringe on someone else's IP, even if it's unintentional. So it's really quite a grey area. And I think hopefully the more governance and regulation is in place around the development of these technologies, the more clarity will come from this, because let's face it, everyone's playing catch up on that. So be mindful of that. It's a bit of a minefield. I asked Deep Research to run a report on intellectual property. Really didn't help. It's like 25-page report. It's just quite complicated, I'd say. So that's what I can share from that. If anyone's got some really good tips on intellectual property or any of these other risks, some good resources, please do share. Another shout out for AI for Non-Techies, who run some really good training programs on getting started with AI. I went in a workshop on theirs and learned a lot of this stuff from their resources. And last one is bias and trust in AI. there's bias. AI is trained on human content, so there's all kinds of bias, racial bias, gender bias, cultural bias. Because it's trained on all this data, some sources are really reliable. Let's say BBC, fairly objective news outlets. Other less so because they'll train on Reddit and forums and social media. So that's just a given. That's what's happening with where the data is coming from, and AI can reflect and amplify that human bias. For instance, some perspectives might be overrepresented from for specific demographics because this is all pulled from online content. So people that are not online will not be well represented from AI outputs, and so the safeguards are improving around this. Everything's improving, but the risks remain. What we can do with this is, again, treating the outputs as suggestions, not facts, using our human oversight, fact checking, putting our human affinity right on certain things, especially if we're like experts in a specific user group context. Check it. You're in charge, and really prioritize care when we're working with sensitive subjects. If we're generating images and something doesn't feel right, address it. And the great thing with image generation is you can start really changing that, have a flow and prompt it with like, can you change this? Can you change that? So use it as a tool, and you're in charge. And really, AI should enhance, not replace our human judgment. And I think that comes through all these risks, right? We are mindful of them. We're aware of them. We need to decide how we're going to navigate around those based on what we know at the moment. Curious to know, how concerned are you about AI risk for your charity? Because it's coming up a lot. And we're always trying to get a sense of like where people are at with this. So I'd love to quickly do a poll on here. Like, how concerned are you about the risks? For instance, we've covered here data safety, environmental impact, hallucinations, intellectual property, bias, trust. And it's from scale from 1 to 5, not at all 1, very concerned, 5. Thanks for joining the poll. Those of you that are on the poll, we're using Mentimeter. For those of you that may have missed a section. Yeah, so data safety still seems to be the main one. And that reflects also the survey results. We had 73 times more than last year. Data safety was the main concern. And yeah, let's keep voting. We'll share these afterwards. Just good to get a little snapshot based on 70 responses. That's great. Ellen, back over to you, I think. Last part.
Yes, fab. So, yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, kind of what you're feeling most concerned about. I think, really important to address some of the concerns, but also not let that kind of stop us from, experimenting. Some really great ideas around how to experiment. I think in the breakouts we had earlier, we've got this AI experiment canvas. If you were with us for the last session, you'll have seen this. There's a really helpful way to structure your experiment. So we've got a template for this. All of this is in the resource hub. But you can, if you had a little idea that sparked an idea today or before, write a description. What is your experiment? What is the purpose of it? What's your hypothesis of what do you think is going to happen by using it? I think it's going to be, quicker for me to write that report if I'm using this tool, or it's going to help me generate better insight. How are you going to test it? How will you know that it works? What tool are you using? So some like really kind of clear step-by-step approaches here, and you can kind of fill this in, either print this off and fill it in individually with your team, or do it on Miro. Who's the person in the loop? So we talked about like human in the loop. Who's going to be making sure that that you're thinking about the ethics and the bias and the environment and your data. That might be you. You're in charge of your experiment. But please do share it. So, really helpful to see how others are experimenting. If you want to give this a go and you've got questions, please come along to the drop-in next week. So we can, help you out. We can kind of share and learn together as we start experimenting. So start small, but do start, and share it so we can keep learning together. We're going to run through just some next steps then. So we mentioned, I don't know if we've got time for questions, reflections. What do you reckon, David?
I'm going through them now in the chat. So maybe we line up the next steps and support, because I know you've got a little activity lined up for people to take away. We'd be ashamed to miss that. And I'll bring out some questions.
Fab. So yeah, we've got a kind of a new template. We're experimenting too. We would love you to try it out with us. See if it helps you. Bring it along to the next session. Give us some feedback. But the idea is, and I'll share it in a second, is you're going to list out 10 tasks. So last workshop we thought about one task that's currently causing you frustration, eating up too much of your time, repetitive, stopping you from doing something you love. This time, stretch goals, so 10 tasks. List those out. We've got a template to help. Prioritize one. So what would be the most kind of impactful for you to focus on? What would excite you to do a bit of experimentation around how AI might help you address that? And then, you're not on your own, so you can explore how is the sector experimenting? Does that spark any ideas? So David showed a little kind of screenshot. We've got some examples. I think we've got time, maybe David, to bring that up and just demo that if you've got the link, or I can share it in the chat. That might help.
Sorry,
just
Ellen, I
bring
was
us along.
looking at questions. I was looking at questions. Could you repeat that, please?
Sorry, do you have the Miro board open just to share? I'll put it in the chat as well. Just to introduce this activity. We've got a template that you can use. If we don't have time to demo it now, have a look in your own time. But they've got these little examples of different case studies. So the one like David shared around MadLab, how they're experimenting. There is the Brilliant Club experimenting with Miro AI for user research. Have a look at those, see what idea that sparks for how you might start experimenting, and then start planning your experiment using that experiment canvas. So we would love you to have a go at this. Maybe set aside 30 minutes this week, next week to give that a go, and then let us know how it goes at the drop-in next week. So that is one invitation to help you continue this learning, and then we're going to hopefully see you at some future workshops which we've got coming up. So I mentioned the drop-in next week. There's also a workshop on I can see loads of people in the Miro board having a look at that canvas. That's great. There's also a couple of more workshops. So we've focused on efficiency ways of working today, but there's a workshop coming up on the 25th of June. So at 10 a.m., same time, same place. What could AI mean for your mission? And then there's another drop-in. So we've got one on the 30th of June at 12 o'clock as well. So we'd love to see you there. All of the links are in our AI resource hub, which we'll share in the follow-up and in the chat as well, along with the slides and the recording for this. And then I think we're going to wrap up maybe with a checkout, thinking about how you're feeling now about AI. I'm going to put the Miro link in the chat.
Sorry, I was just answering some questions in the chat. There's a lot of questions in the chat about copyright stuff, so I'm just trying to, there's long answers, so I'm trying to summarize. And I'm not a lawyer, so I would also say any specific queries around copyright IP that are more specific, definitely worth asking an expert. As well, of course, as if you haven't got any other, if you want to sort of give it a go and see what kind of output you're getting. Deep research is a really great tool for this. I don't know if you've used it at all. I can quickly share what I did for carbon footprint. So this is on the fee-paying ChatGPT version. You selected to go in deep research mode, and you prompt it obviously with a specific task, and then it'll play it back to you, ask some clarifying questions, and then it'll run some research in the background. So this was running last night. This is like 6 minutes, 25 sources, 120 searches. And then you can see the kind of activity it's doing. It's kind of updating you on what it's looking at, the kind of inputs it's looking at, the sources it's taking, and it's pulled out a report on like Gen AI's carbon footprint in the UK perspective. You could do the same for the question around copyright. Can I use AI output? Is it legal? I would say ask it, unless you've got a friend lawyer and you can get a free consultation, because it will come up with some useful information in the sense that it's pulling out it's putting out sources and references, so you can go and click on those and then go and dive into some of these. The sustainable, I can go and click on any of these and go and find out where it's pulled that, what's the original source from. So this is a really useful tool that we're finding, especially when we've got kind of more complex questions on specific things or strategic questions, or you want to do some market research. You can really set it some clear jobs, a bit like an agent, a bit like delegating it to just go and run this research for me whilst I'm running a workshop and doing something a bit more useful in for my time. So have a look at that, definitely. Deep research in ChatGPT. It's available also with Perplexity and some other tools. So I would love it if we could wrap up. Any other questions? There's an invitation to come and join me. Ellen was there last week. It'd be great to get lots of you join and also have a conversation about some of this. I know some of you have a lot to share on this, and I'll drop in next week on the 18th. So sign up to that. We'll share the link as part of the follow-up. And wrapping up, we want to do a bit more polling. We've got a couple of minutes. Be great to see how confident do you now feel about starting to use AI in your work. The options are not confident at all, slightly confident, confident, very confident. And we've got a few more joining the poll. Nice. I can't quite remember the start of the workshop. It'd be amazing if there was a shift in 85 minutes. And so we'll have a look at that. We'll share the comparative data from that. But great to see that half of you are feeling confident, and let's keep learning together. I think on the back of these sessions, the Q&A, join the network, join our Digital Leaders Network if you want to learn more. Join our AI peer group. There's a crew here today. They're sharing loads of useful stuff in the chat. Thank you so much, guys. And yeah, join us for that. One more. What's one thing you'll try after this session? And that's building on Ellen's little homework, invitation to do homework. What's one thing you're going to try? One quick thing. I think it's going to come up as a word cloud to see what's
And
coming
just to
through.
say, yeah, like looking back at the poll at the beginning, 23% felt confident, and now we've shifted to 51%. So that's double. So yeah, that feels good.
Amazing, thanks. And there's some suggestions of what we'd like to discuss next in future sessions. Please, there's going to be a link to the survey. We'd love to hear what you'd like us to cover in future sessions, because we will definitely do our best to put that on, and it's really responding to your needs. So please do fill in the feedback survey that's coming up next in the chat. A couple of minutes, and it will give us real insights on how we can keep providing sessions that are useful for people. So thanks, Selena, for sharing that in the chat. All right, so I can see there's some things going to try social media content, maybe start paying for tools so you can really kind of start using the feature, some of the more advanced features. Strongly recommend that if you've already done some dabbling. Next step is really getting a subscription and really experimenting a bit more expansively. Notebook LM, free tool, give it a go. And then again, you've got the fee paying version if you think this is a real kind of helper for your work or other aspects of your life. Amazing. Well, again, we'll share these. Keep voting whilst we wrap up. We've got 1 minute left. I would love it if we could quickly share this link before people jump off for other meetings. We got it somewhere. Let me check. So this is, it would be amazing to
put it in the chat.
share
Yeah,
feedback.
it's in the chat.
You got it?
Yeah, it's in the chat. I'll put it again.
Amazing.
And we'll put this in the follow-up as well. So if you don't have time to do this now, which yeah, please do spend 5 minutes giving us a bit of feedback. What should we cover in the next session?
That's a wrap. Thank you so much, everyone. Really enjoyed that. Hope it was helpful. Tell us if it wasn't, so we can produce a more useful session next time. And really great to see lots of engagement in the chat. We'll put all this up with some help from AI, from Notebook LM, a little podcast. We'll do a nice little digest as part of the follow-up. So thank you so much for your help. If you've got any further questions, do join me next week for probably a more intimate session with less screen sharing and less polls and more conversation. Thanks so much, Ellen. Anything you would like to add?
No, just big thank you. Hopefully see you at the next sessions.